Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Safely home from Ydra, the crew contemplates Lydia's motives for not turning them over to the Asteri. Baxian tries to convince them he's an ally, only to be ignored. Once alone, Hunt and Bryce fight about the truth of Emile and Bryce's actions to find and keep the boy safe. Ruhn checks in with his housemates while Hunt checks in with Celestina and Tharion with the River Queen. Hypaxia seeks Ruhn's help and protection, which presents Ithan the best opportunity to reach out to Connor at the coming Autumnal Equinox.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author.
This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
The interpretations presented in this podcast are just a few of many possibilities. Listeners are encouraged to read along and share their own analysis of the text.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series and extended universe spoilers may be discussed with or without warning.
Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
If you are enjoying the podcast, check out our Patreon for more exclusive content. You can find us at patreon.com/Book Talk for Book Talk.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we are exploring Sarah J. Maas's second installment in the Crescent City series.
This is Jac.
And I'm Amy.
This week we're discussing chapters 48 through 53 in A House of Sky and Breath.
The question we ask ourselves this week is, to what extent does Bryce's handling of Emile and Hunt in this section convey a loss of identity for Bryce?
Themes we'll see in this section, and there's a lot: games and doubt, the loss of identity, and information as currency. Chapter 48 starts with part 3, The Pit, as Amy pointed out last time. And it has Bryce and Hunt and Ruhn all in Bryce's apartment, and they're worried, right? Because the Hind isn't there. No one showed up to arrest them. Hunt is calling Isaiah, Ruhn is calling Deck, and Bryce has no one to call. Quote, so she'd spend the last few minutes trying hard to teleport from the couch to the kitchen. Bryce is kind of sitting in her own perceived failures because, I mean, I personally wouldn't call it a failure, but she did not teleport when they needed it the most. Mm-hmm. And I think that is clearly really sticking with her. She's trying to find that piece, you know, to like, okay, I can at least I can contribute to, but nothing's happening.
I think it's important that this is what we're opening up with at the start of part 3, which is the pit, the 7th layer of hell. Since the beginning of Earth and Blood, we've gone through the 7 layers of hell, and Bryce now finds herself at the bottom.
Yeah.
And we should feel a sense of foreboding. This is, from a writing perspective, the peak time for Bryce to really doubt herself and all the characters to doubt themselves or each other. And I think we're really going to see that in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. They are stuck, they being Bryce, Hunt, and Ruhn. They're all stuck trying to understand the Hind's motives, but they're also kind of missing the point, which is funny because Bryce says, quote, we've forgotten one key thing. Sophie died knowing vital intel. The Hind knew that, was afraid enough to kill her to make sure the intel dies with Sophie. Again, the intel died with Sophie. The Asteri will never know what she knew.
Is that true?
Yeah, because the intel died with Sophie. She wasn't able to interrogate her. Now, the Asteri could make guesses. They knew that what room she came out of.
Yeah, so they can guess what she knew.
Exactly. But at the same time, like, what about her contacts? What about command? Has she told anyone? Those are the things that you'd want to know. Like, I personally am not a war commander. However, I would think that you would need to know, like, okay, well, what have they disclosed? Yeah. But the Hind made sure the intel died with her. Now that Bryce and Hunt have had sex, there's an open emotional intimacy that is shared between the two of them. Quote, Bryce leaned her head against Hunt's shoulder, a casual, steadying sort of intimacy. The sex on the ship had been life-altering, soul-altering, just altering. She couldn't wait to have him again. Now, we have like this kind of funny moment of like, oh, she can't wait for round 2. At the same time, intimacy has been established. They're now able to act on that intimacy. They're not like, they don't have to wait for anything. But I think it's important to the reader to solidify just how much Bryce cares about Hunt, because we're about to get some news that is going to make the reader very annoyed at her. But I also want to point out that Bryce is recognizing the altering of her. Now, granted, she's been planning this Emile thing a lot longer. She's been altered sooner, but I think it's been building up, and just how much she's not the Bryce that she started, this book or even the last book, right?
Yeah.
She's changed, and we're going to see her act out at the fear of losing her own identity. Yeah.
I completely agree. And I want to add that layer, diving further into it, regarding the soul altering. Bryce is truly mated now. Like they went the full way. That's kind of how the bond snaps into place, right? And solidifies. And in a lot of ways, because that bond is now in place, now she's truly capable of fulfilling her destiny to save Midgard from the Asteri. It's soul altering also because she's officially become Princess of the Fae, Bryce Dannon, and married to Hunt.
Yep.
And that's not something we really understand yet, not something she understands yet, but it's altering on a lot of levels. Quote, she couldn't wait to have him again. I feel like in this sentence, while Bryce is losing her human identity, which we'll talk about soon, she's also, in my opinion, forging a new identity with Hunt through mutual ownership. And why do I say that? Bryce and Hunt are going to be, I think, in my opinion, better able to empathize with each other in the long run now that they've become joined, and that's going to make them a better team overall. Then this happens. Quote, Hunt's hand tangled in her hair and he tugged on the strands, getting Bryce to look up at him. He kissed her nose, her chin, her mouth. It feels very claiming.
Yep.
But also the idea of Hunt's hand in her hair playing with the strands. We haven't seen that since the CCB at the beginning of the book, where Bryce is like, he's so comfortable there. And then he proceeds to doubt himself for many, many, many chapters. So we finally come back to a rightful place where they feel, whether or not they are, they feel balanced. And I think that's epitomized in this action. In some ways, you can tell in this moment that Hunt feels like they're kind of on an even playing field. Not only by the claiming of the ownership, but also what Jac will talk about next. Before we get to that point, I couldn't help but appreciate SJM calling herself out here. Hunt says he's up for sex, even though he's tired, and Bryce responds, quote, good. I'd hate for you to be unable to keep up in your old age. It's the small things.
It is. It really is. Looking at the camera, I'm realizing I'm back in my Bryce.
You are in your Bryce era.
Again, yeah. That means I've gone back to red temporarily, guys. Swing back and forth. Baxian then shows up and says that he wants to be in the club. He's like, hey guys, you're the cool kids. I'd like to join the cool kids. Not those words exactly. But they're still not willing to open up to him, because that's a hell of a thing to be like, yes, come join our rebel cause. But I also think like they don't even know their rebel cause. Like they kind of just made this whole like, okay, we're not going to support them anymore. So at first I was like, why are you guys like, just tell him everything. I probably wouldn't survive, but, that's my mentality.
Yeah.
Of course they're not going to let him in because he's not willing to let them in just yet. He's not mentioning Danica. Baxian says, quote, "Did I not warn your asses yesterday? Did I not back you up when Sabine came raging in here? Have I said anything to anyone about it since?" He wants to be led into this club on his own merit. He wants to be like, I have proven that I am loyal for this. And, I believe this probably comes from years of him making bad choices, bad calls. And this is probably like his way of redemption is like, if I can prove that I can get in here on merit alone and not just because of my association, aka matage, with Danica, then it'll be worth it. And I think maybe he wants to keep Danica to himself a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Because it was a secret.
Yeah. And he's probably still in mourning, so it totally makes sense.
Absolutely.
What we're seeing here, from my point of view, is a series of unfortunate events. While Baxian has potentially proven himself based on his merit, he did walk in a conversation where everyone was like, well, Lidia plays the long game. Who knows how she's going to turn us over to the Asteri, but she's not going to do it until it's most convenient for her.
Yeah.
So by extension, that applies to Baxian.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before, how Baxian always gets grouped with Lidia.
Yeah.
And
which is funny because it's a bad thing now, but
good
accurate.
Thing later, right?
Yeah, good thing later, and it's accurate.
It's actually a great little breadcrumb on SJM's part. Infuriating right now because we want Baxian in on the team, but the group says to him, quote, "Who knows what you're planning with her?" Like, no, not yet. He's not ready for the high stakes game with Lidia.
Yeah, he will soon. I was about to make a hand joke, but there's nothing there.
Like Ruhn's hand.
Ruhn's hand, yeah. When we do Flame and Shadow, I want to get a severed hand. Because, like, right now we have behind us, like, just a fun
hand
mask
up here.
Yeah, no, I want, like, a bloodied fake severed hand, and I want it behind us. When Bryce and Hunt are alone, Bryce starts to kind of tempt Hunt for sex. Quote, "Hunt chuckled, leaning to brush a kiss on her mouth. He paused millimeters away from her lips, close enough that she could feel his smile, and said, 'How about you tell me what the fuck you know about Emile?'"
Am I the only one who thought this was hot?
No, I was.
He could have just pounded it out of her right then and there. Save us all a lot of grief.
Like, tell me about Emile, and then have sex. But it's also like you want to talk about a child and have sex.
That's not how I was playing it out in my head, but I see your point.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, Hunt is now playing Bryce's game because Hunt has figured out Bryce's truth. And the way he's revealing it is such a Bryce way.
Yeah.
And even more Bryce way, he's using sex to get Bryce comfortable and then denying her of that sex for answers. It's very Bryce of him.
It's very Bryce of him. And he's really, even when he's mad at Bryce, he's still going to channel Bryce, which is so fun to see because they've come such a long way together.
Yeah, absolutely. In chapter 49, we're with Ruhn. He's at home and he is learning about the sprites and the dragon. And it's a funny little scene here. Quote, "Flynn said, leaping to his feet, 'So you're always saying it's pretty sexist that we don't have any female roommates.' I never said that." And then, Flynn's like, ta-da! Here you go. Flynn is hilarious. I'm appreciating him a little bit more.
This is a kind of joke that you would say.
This is 100% the joke I would say. But I also feel like it's kind of SJM poking fun of herself.
Mm-hmm.
But like, this episode is the first time we're really getting female characters. Like we had June, we had Fury briefly, but suddenly we got the sprites, we got the dragon, we're going to Hypaxia. Yeah. Like we're starting to get a lot more female players. And whether she knows that that's kind of, call it sexist, call it not sexist, whatever, but there aren't a lot of women in the beginning of this book. I would like to imagine that she said that as a way of kind of like saying, I know what I did.
Yeah. Maybe her editor said something and she's like, I'm going to call myself out.
Yeah.
And then have these women show up.
People should always be called out in nice, gentle manners when needed. It's an all-around funny moment. Even Ruhn's reaction when he sees the sprites, quote, "Our insurance rates will go sky high," Ruhn said to Declan, appealing to the slightly less insane of his roommates. "When the fuck did you become a grown-up?" Jacqueline barked. I mean, it's Flynn, but again, I think I've said these things. But again, they're all in their 80s.
Well, that's the irony of this moment, right? That they are just a bunch of frat bros.
Yeah.
And they have been a long time. And it's actually, I think, a really key moment that signals to us Ruhn is maturing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's not that long ago. He was high on mirth root.
Eating out some stranger. Blessing us all.
Good for him.
Yeah. Knowing 3 things.
Knowing 3 things. Yes, you are correct. I forgot. So this is not the only marker of change we're going to see. I'm going to call them out. But I feel like being a spy, interacting with Day have been slowly bringing about this change. And he's looming and he's approaching that point of no return. That point where when he mind fucks Day,
but in a good way,
in a great way, he can't come back from that.
Yeah.
He's set his course in stone as well. Quote, please tell me they're at least here legally. Like, how much of this, he wouldn't care about this at the beginning of Sky and Breath.
No. And I'm going to like kind of point out something that I was going to point out later, but I feel like this is good now. It's weird thinking that he's going to move in with Lidia in just like 2 months-ish.
Yeah, well, lots about to change for him.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and I think 2 months I'm being like generous. I think it's like closer to a month and a half or a month.
I think this is 3 weeks away from the Autumnal Equinox.
Okay, the Autumnal Equinox, and then everything goes down maybe like a little bit after that.
Yeah.
And then Flame and Shadow is like
so
a
like
week
a
and
month.
A half. Yeah, Flame and Shadow is like a week and a half, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
max 6 weeks.
It's so weird that Flame and Shadow is such a short timeline.
I think that's actually very normal for fantasy books.
We'll discuss that in that season.
Young adult. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, in that season. But yeah, like, you know, but like these are little clues that he's growing up, you know, because he definitely wouldn't say that before. And, you know, he's about to become a stepfather. This moment with Ruhn learning about the sprites and the dragon, it's kind of meant to reflect what's going on with Hunt, who is learning about Emile. Truths are happening left and right. With Hunt and him learning about Emile, quote, Hunt had 2 options, start shouting or laughing. He hadn't decided which one he wanted to do as they walked down the narrow hallway of the most lethal warehouse in the meat market. You can really see Hunt struggling with the anger, but also the respect of like, holy shit, you pulled this together. You pulled this off. I think there's also an element where he's not entirely surprised. Like he's surprised, but he's not thrown off of like, Bryce would never do this. This is so unlike her. It's just kind of like a, damn it, how did I not expect this type thing? Like even Tharion later would be like, should have known.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's what it is for Hunt is he only just barely noticed it yesterday. Yeah. He's probably upset he couldn't approach Bryce about it sooner.
He's probably upset that he couldn't approach it because they were busy having sex. So he's like, damn it, I like not talking to her about it. But also, damn it.
Well, and also all of this was happening while he was stuck in the barracks for a week. Yeah. So that's one thing that irks me about this sequence is that he's upset, she's upset, but it was very clear there was a communication barrier for legitimate reasons for 7 days.
I also feel like both of them didn't properly get upset about the right things and neither of them properly apologized. We'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
There's another quote I wanted to read here. Quote, Hunt had been too fucking pissed to ask any questions. So fucking pissed that it had driven away any lingering lust from last night. That's how you know things are serious. It's driven away lust for him. It is gone. But before going forward, I think it's important to establish this, that Hunt feels betrayed. So, you know, I kind of like what you're saying, like there was no moment to tell him. There was when she decided it.
Yeah.
Now, there's also legitimate reasons why she didn't tell him during a certain week. It goes into more for Hunt that this is about betrayal for him, but for Bryce, this is about Emile. So both of them are arguing about kind of 2 different subjects,
right,
while all in the same subject.
Right. And I think as we go through it, we're going to see how Hunt is really dealing not only with Bryce's betrayal, but the betrayal he feels from every woman in power that he's been with.
Yeah. Like he's like, why do I have this type? This
is a core issue for Hunt that's really happening. And in a lot of ways, it's a core issue for Bryce too.
Yeah.
Their cores happen to be a little bit different. But I think what is upsetting in this moment for Hunt, I was just talking about finally feeling balanced and equal. Bryce already toppled that before they even got to it, right? She made any possibility of equality null and void for
Yep.
them. And I don't blame Hunt for being upset.
Think about the fact that last chapter, he was like, there's last chapter, whenever they had sex, that he was like, holy shit, this is what she feels like always when he had that power. So how much of it is the assumption of like, she feels like she can do anything she wants, and she's literally doing whatever she wants right now. She's not consulting him.
Yeah.
So that feeling that he had, maybe it was more than just like this power, I can physically do whatever, but like that attitude, I can do whatever, is what he was picking up on.
Yeah.
And that's a legitimate attitude that Bryce has.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not good when you have a partnership.
Yep. Which we will get into.
Mm-hmm. Hunt questions Bryce because, keep in mind, people died for this. Quote, and you were fine with this? Not simply killing those people, but framing Pippa? Something crumpled in his chest. Was this any different from his time with Shahar? Falling for a beautiful, powerful female, only to have her hide her innermost thoughts. No, Bryce said, paling. I wasn't fine with that part at all. You know, kind of like what you're saying that, you know, right, Hunt is like, oh no, I have a type and it's murderous women. I can relate, except it's douchebag men. And actually it's avoidant attachment. We've discussed this in therapy. Anyway, for this, that's not me. Hunt is really struggling with this truth and this reality. But I think what's hard, and both of them recognize it, but without actually recognizing it, is that Bryce has given up her humanity to be completely Vanir in order to save Emile. Like, that's what she got, people killed. And while she doesn't like that happened, she will say later that she doesn't regret it.
Yeah.
And that is a Vanir thing to think of. That is not a very human thing. And Hunt is upset about it. Like, you know, I think Bryce is going to mourn this loss of humanity for her. And I think Hunt's also kind of like mourning that a little bit too.
Yeah, I can see that.
Quote, this was a stupid fucking thing to do, Hunt snarled, and immediately halted himself from the bruised look that came into her eyes. He's condemning her for the reality of the situation, but I think it hurts because Bryce respects Hunt and she's seen that he is disappointed in her. But again, people died. I think someone's allowed to be disappointed in you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think also it's a really tough juxtaposition when a few hours earlier, she was like, oh, soul altering sex. I want to have him again. And now he's like, I'm disappointed in you.
Yeah.
That's got to be hard.
I can't handle when someone's disappointed. I would crumble. It would be like, I'm disappointed. I mean, he didn't say he was disappointed in her, but it's in the subtext. And I'd just be like, all right, well, you know, I lose. Sign me up, Viper Queen. Let me repent forever.
Well, and I'm going to talk about it later, but it is very karmic.
Yeah.
Like for Bryce.
Yep.
That she's done it once to Juniper. She's doing it to Hunt.
Yep.
We're going to see her do it again.
Yep.
But, you know, Lahaba's dead, so it's fine.
You don't have to bring that. You don't have to bring that here. Not yet. Like I was saying, Bryce lacks guilt. She has some remorse, but overall she does not regret what happened. Quote, Bryce murmured coldly as they aimed for the sitting room. I'm not letting this poor kid fall into anyone's hands, even Cormac's. I mean, she's about to get more cold-hearted with this as time goes on. But a part of Bryce's guilt is that I think she still needed Hunt's help.
Yeah.
So she has these warring thoughts, right? On one side, she's like, fuck you, fuck everyone. I'm going to get this kid. I'm going to do this all on my own if I have to. Because again, she is doing this all on her own.
Yeah.
At the same time, she needs to accept that she can't do this without Hunt. Quote, I needed you and Fury with me so that the Viper Queen would remember who would come fuck her up if she hurt the kid in the process. Bryce is referencing when her Hunt and Fury and Juniper all went to the meat market.
Right.
And she was just using him to look dangerous.
Yeah.
She can't use her own name and her own threat and her own power for this. It was Hunt and Fury. So I think there's a little bit of pride and ego there too, where it's like she can't even say like, oh yes, I can do this all on my own. Like, screw you all. This is all me. Nope. You still needed him. Would she even be able to do all of this without the backup power?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about that when you're done.
Ooh. Bryce, though, hasn't really accepted her Hunt's anger. Because once she does, she shuts down.
Yeah.
And that is such an unhealthy thing to do. But at this point, she's trying to still tempt him with sex. The Viper Queen says, quote, "Ignore the angel. He's all bark and no bite." "Oh, he likes to bite," Bryce murmured. But Hunt was in no mood to laugh or even smile. Sex isn't working for her here.
Yeah.
You know it's serious.
So I'm going to look at it a little bit of a different way, because to me, this sequence is about what Bryce just said. She needs the Viper Queen to take her seriously.
Yep.
And so she's going to wield her power, aka Hunt, around so that the Viper Queen doesn't renege on anything, doesn't hurt Emile, so that they can safely get Emile out. So here are a couple ways that she does this. We start with food as power. The Viper Queen asks Bryce, quote, "Come to collect your package or make more threats about Athalar cooking me alive?" Again, Hunt's the weapon. Viper Queen is the prey. Bryce has no power. She has to have Hunt to intimidate the Viper Queen. Bryce is also using her feminine because she knows the Viper Queen doesn't take her seriously. She's trying to placate with the feminine, right? We're both females. Let's get along.
Yeah.
Instead of answering direct questions, Bryce deflects with the feminine by saying, quote, "Nice sneakers," was all Bryce said, gesturing to the snake shifters' white and gold high tops. And then finally, we have sex as a weapon. So where you talked, Bryce, I was about to call you Bryce.
I mean, the red hair, I get it.
Yeah. Where you talked about the quote about Hunt biting as appealing to Hunt, I actually think it's a weapon against the Viper Queen. So when Bryce says he likes to bite, Bryce is signaling she has successfully bedded Hunt. In Earth and Blood, the Viper Queen made it very, very clear she was interested in riding Hunt. And so what Bryce is doing here is saying, I've had sex with him. He's mine. You never got that chance and you never will.
I like that. Literature, baby. You can analyze. I'm sticking with it. You can analyze any way you want. Another example of Bryce losing her humanity, coming back into that because she is really stepping into her veneer. Quote, Bryce nodded at the Viper Queen. "I'd like a moment with Emile, please." It was a command from a princess to another ruler. Bryce has to step into that princess title. And she was probably doing that the whole time, when it comes to the Viper Queen, because Bryce negotiated a favor. A favor from a citizen means nothing. A favor from
a princess,
starborn princess, means a lot.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, Bryce steps into her humanity when it comes to Emile. Quote, Bryce plopped onto the couch beside Emile and said, "So what's up?" The boy and Hunt blinked at her. It's like a light switch. She's able to go right back into it. But, we've talked about this before, that she sees herself with Emile. So I think it's fair to say that Emile is her humanity. He is the link to her and her own humanity and to her parents, because now that's going to be her adopted brother who also represents her humanity. So keep all of that in mind as we continue the discussion around Hunt and Bryce's argument.
To your point, it makes sense why Bryce sends Emile to her parents, because they were the only ones who could keep Bryce safe while she was human. So why not send a human boy to them as well?
Yep.
I also want to... So I'm going to argue a different case. Not that yours... it's not against you.
Yeah.
Let me start with that.
Different point of view.
Different point of view. So I'm going to argue throughout this sequence that Emile is Hunt.
Oh, I love it. Two different sides of the same coin.
Yeah, exactly. We have to remember that in this scene right now, we are in Hunt's point of view. We understand his anger and the way he's feeling towards Bryce right now, but we also get to witness his moments of empathy. Quote, before Hunt could contemplate roasting the Viper Queen, Emile squeaked, "Hi!" He was just a kid, alone and afraid. The thought doused any lightning in Hunt's veins. And I think that's the starting point for Hunt. And he's going to have so many emotions throughout this scene, both anger towards Bryce, empathy towards Emile. He's a very confused boy. This is a roller coaster for him.
It's a roller coaster for all of us because, he feels for the boy, but in his mind, the boy is still veneer. Hunt tries to look for Emile's power, for, quote, any hint of a magical ability to harvest and transform power to his will. There's still value to him. He's still looking for that veneer, while Bryce is looking for the humanity, the human aspect of him. Still, though, Hunt notices how Emile is super skinny, and he remembers that he'd been in the death camp and feels some shame about it. Like, ooh, shit, you were super skinny now? You must have been worse. Even then, quote, no wonder she'd worked alone to arrange this. None of them had really stopped to think about the kid himself, just his power, what it might mean if the wrong person got a hold of it. Hunt's going to slowly begin to realize, or at least understand, why Bryce made the choice and is full of regret for that. I personally disagree. But it's this is one of those moments where it's like, okay, I have to just like allow the characters to have their views, even if I would handle this differently. But in this moment, quote, Hunt suppressed the urge to gather both of them in his arms and hug them tightly. He feels for them. Like there's a emotional roller coaster. There's a lot of empathy going on. So, I think it's so important that SJM writes these from his point of view, is because he has a lot of empathy. Yeah. That I think the reader might not. Me, the reader. I think it's easy to judge and be angry at Bryce.
Yeah, and I think that if we were seeing this from Bryce's point of view, we would just be angry at Hunt.
I don't know.
Well, okay. Well, let's continue. But before we move on, I just want to point out, Hunt in this moment wants to gather both Bryce and Emile in his arms and hug them. The only other person, quote unquote, Hunt has ever hugged simultaneously when he's also hugged Bryce, Syrinx. And who was Syrinx?
So now Emile Syrinx.
Who did Syrinx represent in Earth and Blood?
Hunt. You're doing A plus B equals C.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I will let you just say your theory before my theory.
Okay. Even though Hunt is realizing that he might have been wrong, he's still shocked to learn that Emile doesn't have powers. Like, he was like, wow, you're right. We were so focused on him having, what the fuck, he doesn't have powers? Not the smoothest writing. Anyway, my personal opinion, again, with this whole section. But this is what I believe what really hurts Bryce, and I have a theory to that. Bryce tells Hunt, the only thing Vanir care about is power. The only way to get them to care about a human boy was to spin a story about him having powers like Sophie's. The only way to make sure he got to safety was to craft a lie about him being valuable. I had a feeling Sophie knew that all too well. Emile is valuable. I think Hunt's reaction, though, is kind of where this all goes a little tits up for me there. Because Hunt has to battle with, quote, anger and fear once he realizes the Viper Queen's going to be like mad, like Emile doesn't have powers. So, Bryce is kind of like, hey, here is why I did this. Like, we need to remember that Emile is valuable as a human, and Hunt doesn't have the first right reaction. His reaction is like, but what about the Viper Queen, realizing that he's not valuable? He doesn't quite hear what she says. Initially, he does, though. Bryce responds, quote, Sophie was part human, like me. You've never spent a moment of your life as a human, Hunt. You always had to value Vanir. You just said so yourself. Because his reaction was thinking about how the Viper Queen would react. So in CC1, we definitely saw comments that Hunt made that made us go, you know what? It makes sense. Like, it makes sense that Bryce might not have trusted him and been like, I don't think you view humans completely the way that you should. But if you're like, hey, what did we say? I don't know. Go back to listen to that season. we made some lovely points there. But in my view, Bryce sees herself in Emile, a human. And if Hunt can't value Emile as a human, then Hunt won't be able to value her as a human. And I think that this was just kind of like almost a test, a subconscious test that like Hunt fails. So that's one perspective. Another perspective can be.
My perspective is about Hunt seeing himself in Emile. Because right now, Hunt is mad at Bryce.
Yep.
Because he's mad at all the women in his life that have ever lied to him.
Not his mom.
And his mother never lied to him.
Yep.
But he struggles with the memories of Shahar. He struggles with Bryce right now. He's going to struggle with Celestina later.
Yeah.
It's just not a good time for Hunt right now.
Not a good time for women around Hunt.
Nope. So at first, let's start with Hunt assumes Emile is a Thunderbird. That's a direct correlation to Hunt. Hunt sees the value in a Thunderbird, right? Because that's the whole point of finding Emile anyway, to make sure no one uses his power. Quote, Thunderbirds are insanely rare. A lot of people would want that power. I'm not a Thunderbird, but I've got a similar gift. Made me valuable. Not in any way that counts deep down, but it made certain people willing to do a lot of bad things to attain me. Hunt melted a bit at the trust in the kid's face. This is right before Hunt is told Emile is not Vanir. And Hunt, later on, is going to feel a lot of shame and ugliness. And I think what he's going to come to realize is that Hunt looks for the value in Emile just like everyone else looked at the value in Hunt.
Yeah.
Archangels literally traded and bartered for Hunt because of the value of his lightning gift. Hunt is doing nothing different in essence when he looks at Emile. He's looking for that power, mostly so that he can bond with this kid, but also because that's how he's thinking of the world. What if Ophion gets him? What if the Viper Queen doesn't know that he doesn't have powers? So in my mind, he's realizing he's no better than the people who have enslaved him for 200 years. And
I like it.
I'm going to get more into that in the next chapter.
Yeah, because in the next chapter, chapter 50, that's when Emile drops the bomb of like, oh yeah, I know Danica. I heard that name before. Like real casual. And Emile isn't able to provide much more than like kind of like honestly what we already knew.
Yeah.
And Emile apologizes for not knowing. Quote, Hunt cleared his throat, reached in front of Bryce to clasp the boy's shoulder. You did good, kid. Really good. We owe you. Hunt in this moment is able to like reach in front of Bryce. Like he's kind of cutting her off. And I feel like this represents that he truly feels that empathy for Emile.
Yeah.
Like he's willing to cross her, go in front of her to empathize with him, to connect with him. And I just think that's a nice moment.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, we see a lot of Hunt taking the initiative and being the one to tell Emile that Sophie's dead. Bryce doesn't tell him. Hunt is the one who tells him.
I didn't remember that.
Hunt really reaches out with Emile. And again, because he sees himself, he has empathy for him. And no matter how mad he is at Bryce, that doesn't preclude him from that empathy.
Yeah. Which it's like, Bryce, you should have realized that he'd have that empathy.
Well, yeah, because she taught him empathy, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, so Bryce tells Hunt that she now owes the Viper Queen a favor. This is when she reveals that. And Hunt is mad. Quote, hell yeah, he was going to have his alpha hole fit. Like this deal, it shows that Bryce still considers herself independent. Yeah. That it does not impact others. She doesn't realize that she is no longer alone. This deal was made by the mentality of Bryce from early book one. Someone who didn't have anything to lose, someone who didn't have people that love her and surround her. She has Ruhn, she has Hunt. Hell, she has like Tharion, she has Juniper, she has Fury. Like she has a whole bunch of people who back her. And to go and say, I'll give you whatever favor.
Yeah.
That's going to hurt a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Potentially.
And that, like you're saying, it takes me back to the conversation at the beginning of the episode about this idea of Bryce and Hunt being in a mutual ownership.
Yeah.
And Bryce has bartered herself without Hunt's knowledge or permission. He has a 50% stake in that real estate.
Yeah.
And in some ways, in his mind, I'm sure he's thinking like, you can't do this without consulting me.
Yeah.
Quote, she'd taken in the kid because, despite his potential, there was one thing that might be more valuable to her one day. Bryce owed a favor. Now, that's what Hunt is thinking about the Viper Queen. And you know what? Why is Hunt surprised? She did this for Hunt in Earth and Blood.
Yeah.
Asking for millions and millions of gold marks from Jessica to buy Hunt's freedom.
Bryce loves not valuing herself.
Yeah, or selling herself because she feels worthless. So the fact that she
not valuing it.
Yeah, she can. The fact that she can fool someone into thinking she's worth something.
Yeah.
Is like a good deal for her.
She just doesn't. She doesn't get it. Like you're now in a partnership. That shit matters. While Bryce, now we're back into my perspective that Bryce sees herself in Emile. I do see the moments where Hunt also sees himself as Emile. Quote, he had no bag, no belongings. Hunt remembered that feeling. After his mother had died, he had no traces or reminders or comforts of the child he'd been, the mother who had sung him to sleep. Nausea churned in his gut. I feel like Emile's a little bit of everyone. Like, when it comes to this book, everyone likes to see themselves in people.
Yeah, but I think that's a human thing.
It's a very human thing.
And I do think it's important that Hunt is able to see himself in a human boy. And most importantly, that we, the reader, know that Hunt sees himself in a human boy.
Yeah.
Because it does make Bryce's actions more aggravating.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't trust him. And I think SJM does that for a reason. Because I do think sometimes Bryce was our first protagonist. Mm-hmm. She's the numero uno protagonist in this series. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, most readers are going to side with Bryce, no matter what. We had to have these moments where we're like, Bryce, you're not godly. You're not perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I do like the way of saying that, like, SJM has Hunt realizing his mistakes quickly. Mm-hmm. Because when Bryce shuts down on him, he was ready to be like, you're right, I'm wrong. Yeah, this sucked. Yeah. Even though if I was Hunt, I'd be mad of like, I get why you did it. So why didn't you tell me? Give me credit. I would have, he still wasn't that level of angry at her, but SJM chose to just make this more difficult. And it does make Bryce more human and more flawed and younger and everything. It's risky to do that because you're really setting up your own protagonist to fail and to have the reader potentially be mad at that protagonist. And I think that still has consequences to how people react to her in Flame and Shadow.
Yeah, that's fair.
We'll be right back.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Hunt eventually, like we were saying, comes to full conclusion with Emile. Quote, "Gods, how had everyone forgotten that he was only a kid? Everyone except Bryce. Shahar never would have done something like this. Risk so much for someone who could do her absolutely no good. But Bryce..." Hunt couldn't stop himself from stepping closer to her, from brushing his wing against her in a silent apology. Bryce stepped beyond his reach. Fair enough, he'd been an asshole. They're having like two different conversations a little bit. He's like, "I'm sorry." And she's like, "You touch me, you die."
Yeah, fuck you.
I hate you. Yeah. Throughout all of this, in a chapter and a half, right? Hunt has come to this realization in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
Hunt has worked through all of this. That's a really fast process
Yeah.
of being like, okay, you did something. This hurts me. I get it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, just that like brush of the wing was like, in order to be comforting, he's still, and then she gets shut down. Like, it's a shame of how much more grown he is. But I mean, it's needed because you'll see, like, Bryce kind of has her immaturity that comes out soon.
Right. Well, and as Sham reminded us, before Hunt figures this out and has to go through this, remember, he's old.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true, though, because it is like he's old and he's able to come to these conclusions. Like, even the comparison with Shahar, it's understandable. Like, I get why his mind goes there. You know, people inevitably compare their exes to who they're with at the, like, who they're with present. And Shahar was clearly a ruler, similar to Bryce, but not a good one.
Yeah.
We never talk about that, though, but she was clearly not a good ruler. In comparison to Bryce might be like, dude, that's insulting. Even though she doesn't quite know that yet. But,
Yeah.
you know, it would be insulting. Can Bryce even guess that Hunt's comparing her to Shahar? I mean, I feel like I just assume if I was Bryce, be like, you're probably thinking about Shahar.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know if Bryce knows that Hunt is thinking about Shahar, but I think Shahar's presence in Hunt's thoughts is an important indicator of where he's at mentally.
Yeah.
When he's comparing Bryce to Shahar and they're similar, he's obviously not rational. He's very angry. He hasn't yet processed the feelings associated with that. But now he's taken a step back. He's able to see how Shahar and Bryce are different.
Yeah.
And therefore, we see that he's in a better mental place.
Talk about a topic that was so thrown out in CC3.
Yeah.
His relationship with Shahar. There was a lot of work of like that she was not as good as he thought.
Yeah.
And that there might have been more manipulation and maybe not abuse, but definitely manipulation.
Yeah.
That he wasn't conscious or willing to recognize. All of that to be flown away for phantom machine possession.
Yeah, that moment still made me cry. I think she did it for the tears.
I don't feel bad because I feel like there was a forgiveness that needed to happen.
Yeah, and he hadn't gotten there.
We didn't know if there was anything to forgive. We have, at this point, she's just an ex that died.
Yeah, it's fair.
You know, and I felt like that moment would have been a beautiful moment if it was like, I'm sorry. But we didn't get that. In the final reveal of Bryce's absolute selflessness, so altruistic. I don't know, the whole like, and now I'm sending you home to my family. All right, I'm just being an asshole. Never mind. So
you are really mad at Bryce right now.
I am mad at Bryce. I think that this one was just like her sending Emile home. I get it.
I have thoughts.
It's the equivalent of like almost like Ithan taking off his shirt to give it to Sigrid.
Yeah.
Although this I'm willing to believe more. Anyway, so Bryce tells Emile that he's going to go home to her parents and that he'll be part of her, you know, big messy family. Quote, Hunt had no words. She hadn't only found a place for this lost kid. She found him a new family, her family. His throat tightened to the point of pain, his eyes stinging. Mentally, Hunt is here, right? He's in awe. He's coming around. He's realizing everything. He's like, wow, this is amazing. Bryce, though, is not there. Like, she's mad. She's, in my view, feels rejected of being human, and you know, the humanity's been rejected. But whether you want to have that perspective or not, she definitely feels hurt. He's done her dirty by not immediately, I mean, she's defensive. She's being very defensive right now.
Yeah. So I have two different thoughts. I'm going to first start with your theory, Emile is Bryce. Bryce sending Emile to her parents makes sense.
Yeah.
Because her parents are human.
Yeah.
Bryce has lost her humanity. And so in lieu of the human Bryce that they will never have again, she's saying, here's this other human child you can take care of.
No, I love that.
He's my substitute.
Yeah, he'll die at the appropriate time.
That's right. That's right.
I'll live
You guys
forever.
can all grow old together, right?
Yeah.
So that they're not lonely, that they don't worry about her, like they have somewhere else to focus their energies, because Bryce cannot stand how much energy her mother focuses on her.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, here's a puppy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what happened to my mother. Mom,
here's a dog.
take my puppy.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I also want to acknowledge that Hunt is emotional here because if we think Emile represents Hunt, I can see how Bryce did the one thing no one ever did for Hunt. His mother died. And if someone had helped Hunt when his mother died, rather than let him go join Shahar's army, Hunt could have avoided 200 years of pain and suffering.
Oh, yeah.
And Bryce has essentially done that for Emile.
Yeah.
You know, I can see how they both really are putting a lot of value and stock into Emile, and how their differing perspectives is creating tension.
Yeah.
Because Bryce is like, this is me. And Hunt's like, no, that is me.
Yeah. No, it's both of us. Yeah. It's searing stuff.
Yeah. And if, you know, Bryce is doing something not only important to herself, but important to her family.
Yeah.
And for Hunt to get mad about it is, like you said, a rejection of Bryce and her family.
Yep.
When really Hunt is like, no, I'm human too. I feel the empathy. I understand.
Yeah.
And there's just this two ships passing in the night.
It's true. I realize now why I struggle with this so much with Bryce, because she does everything opposite of what I would have done. And that, like, again, as a reader, I have to, like, you know, put that aside and be like, this is the character, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
But like at every impasse, like, especially when it comes to like discussions, I'm not like a instant reaction. Here's my feelings. I'm going to be defensive. It'll be like, okay, but I want to talk to you about it. Like, what do you think? Like, I'm much more of it. And she just shuts that down. And then here's the other thing why it bugs me that she sent Emile home. Never in a million years would I have put my mom in danger with a potential rebel kid. Associated with it. Like, people are hunting for him. The Asteri are hunting for him.
Yeah.
No.
She's put a target on her parents' back.
Absolutely. Even if, like, they can take care of themselves. No, they can't. No. Like, yeah. So that's another thing where it's like, I don't know. That's a real reckless thing to have done. Especially when you have someone like Cormac who also is an option. Is he the best option? Probably not. But you're not discussing every potential. And one of the potentials is the danger that your parents are now in.
I can see why that makes you so mad.
Yeah, it does. I get it now. I understand myself. I'm wiser. Okay. So now, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, like, we find out that Bryce was communicating with her mother about Emile via code, via postcards.
Yeah.
Using a tool Randall gave her to let her mother into her life.
Yeah.
Right? This is probably the first time Bryce has revealed something that meaningful of like, yeah, Mom, I'm part of the rebel group.
I need help, please. Yeah.
Can you help me with my mistakes?
Yeah.
So, you know, in a lot of ways, I can see how this is monumental for Bryce and her mother.
Yeah.
They're
working on the same side.
Right. They're working on the same team. They're developing trust.
Yep.
And they're in it together. But I can see from your point of view as well how it's just like, damn it, Bryce.
Yeah. And then for Bryce to be like, okay, in book 3, I'm only going to value both your lives to save you guys.
I know.
Let's wish the best of luck for Emile.
Yeah.
You know, like, she was like, he'll be fine. He's with the other ones. But just to be extra safe, you're both here.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
So, I mean, like, yeah, like you have that. Okay, so.
But we're not here to talk about Flame and Shadow.
No, we'll get to that point when we get to that point. So the point that we're at right now, though, is the argument. Quote, "You're sending him to your parents?" he said quietly, her eyes iced over. "Did I miss the memo where I needed your approval to do so?" "For Urd's sake, that's not why I was mad." "I don't care if you're mad," she said, flickering with light. "Just because we're fucking doesn't mean I answer to you." Pretty sure it's a little bit more than fucking. Again, I don't argue this way. I've never argued this way. So this is like, I feel icky. I feel gross. Like, because this is an argument where she's hurting herself. Like, you know, sometimes people just do whatever to hurt the situation and to hurt themselves and hurt everyone in the process. Like, that's not my move. So I think this is where, personally, I feel like Bryce loses people. And I think, like, this is where people really struggle to like forgive Bryce, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to put on my analysis brain and not, like, I had to actively, like, take out my feelings from here. I'll recognize them, but I want you to know I thought about not raging like I have in the past. Bryce as we've talked about, is afraid of how close she's come with Hunt. Like, she's become really close to him. Her power literally needs him.
Yeah.
She has merged with Hunt so much. Her power, her soul, he's her mate. And through all of this, like, that's scary. And he's, whether you want to call it rejecting her humanity or rejecting her plan or not reacting the way that she wanted it to, it hurt her.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that, like, maybe a part of her even kept it a secret in order to continue to thrive and be like, well, at least I have this. And, you know, if you find out, good, like, this is my thing. And this was like her getting to be the most Bryce, which is manipulative and planning. And this is very her. I think, though, by her doing the, like, just because we're fucking, I hate that line so much, but she's doing that to belittle their connection. And what is the one thing that Hunt is so proud of is their connection.
Yeah.
Like, that is the one thing that he's like, I can be whatever so long as I'm yours. Like, you know, I don't care. Like, we're together. This is all that matters to me. And if she can undermine that, if she can belittle that, then that will hurt him the most.
Yeah.
And this is her lashing out.
I think that's a really great point. Something you said made me think, how much of this is Bryce mad that Hunt is rejecting her humanity? Or is it actually Bryce is mad because he's not accepting her fully transcendent Vanir side?
Ooh. Interesting.
Where she's like, I gave up a ton of shit to do something that's important to me. I've gotten full Vanir.
Yeah, I like that.
And what? Now you want to get mad at me for becoming like you?
Yeah. Yeah. That's another. Yeah. Either way, she's got a lot of stuff to be mad at.
Yeah, she
and
does.
I just don't like this. Amy, I don't like this scene. I don't like her arguments. All right, let's continue.
I want to go back to the idea of mutual ownership. Bryce wasn't mad about them fucking earlier. Bryce wasn't mad about Hunt claiming her sexually earlier.
If she loves that shit.
She loves it. And we're going to see that later on.
She's like, give me more of that Umbra Mortis claiming.
Exactly. And so in some ways, you know, what she's demonstrating for us is that only in sex is it acceptable for her. She's really having a hard time accepting the fact that Hunt has a stake in her livelihood. Like, he really wants her to be okay, and she can't just run off and do her own thing. What Bryce, I think, also doesn't like about this idea of mutual ownership is that someone else's opinion matters.
Yeah.
Right? We saw the disaster with Juniper. Juniper's opinion about what she wanted to have happen didn't matter. Bryce just acted without it. And we see that here with Hunt as well. Bryce didn't care what risk to her she was posing. She just did what she wanted to do. And Hunt's mad about that. Bryce wants what she wants. Damn everybody else. I do think we're going to see her reflect on that a little bit during this episode, but not right now. By rejecting Hunt, I believe that Bryce is able to preserve her identity as an individual, right? If he's not accepting me as Vanir, and he maybe never was going to accept me as fully human, then I will just reject him outright.
Yeah.
Because he can't accept me as an individual.
Yeah.
I see her anger as an attempt to claw back at some of that humanity and some of that individuality. Yeah. And she's just not able to.
It sucks because it's like Hunt represents so much more than what he is. Like, again, like, even when they found out about how her power needs his power, he was like, you can just say that you're using me to level up. Like, he is just so... He just wants to be in her presence. He
just wants her to want him.
Yeah. And she does want him, but it freaks her out so much, which, again, like, we can talk about, you know, the trauma that she's had, the way that her dad rejected her and literally left her off the curb, on the curb. Talk about how Ruhn slut shamed her. Talk about how Danica died. And then every single person from the pack of wolves after, pack of devils, but, like, you know, the pack afterwards, like, just hated her. Yeah. You know, like, there's a lot of reasons why Bryce would be afraid of intimacy. Yeah. I recognize that. That's fine. Make smart choices on how you handle it, though. Bryce and Hunt are like, you know, they're like, fine, well, I'm going to leave. And then, like, Hunt flies above to make sure she's home safe. Like, that's really sweet. But Bryce is then called to Ruhn's place where she meets the sprites and the dragon, and she mentions Lahaba. I'm out. You tap in. I can't.
So I view this sequence very similarly to the Mystics in that I didn't realize it was important for Flame and Shadow until I reread it. Bryce talks to the sprites about Lahaba. We learned through this conversation that sprites never lie about their lineage, and Lahaba always used to talk about how she was a descendant of Queen
something.
It's not Rathia, but something like that. The three sprites are so moved by Bryce's friendship and sadness at the loss of Lahaba that they promise, quote, "In her honor, we shall call you an ally of our people."
Yep.
Which I want to point out, the information about Lahaba, information as currency, bought that allyship.
Yep.
I have some feelings about how Bryce uses Lahaba to justify herself sometimes. I'm going to get to that in a second. What's important, though, is that these sprites will help Bryce find the princess sprite who's going to, you know, it's going to have a payoff later when at the Asteri Palace.
Yep.
So, you know, just a small moment, major payoff later.
Absolutely. So now we're going to look into how the narrative around Ithan finding the sprites has changed. We made it super clear last episode that Ithan did not get the rings out of the pureness of his heart. He got it because he was mad. I don't even think he knew the sprites were in there. He just was like, that's a box that seems important. You're mine now.
Yeah.
And then everyone else has kind of been building it up and being like, good job, you. And even Bryce tells him, quote, "I'm glad you stole that from the creep. It didn't feel right leaving him there." And then Bryce thinks, the glimmer of the male she'd once known. Like, she can see him and everything. And it's hard for me to talk about like the inconsistencies in this, and I really struggle back and forth because like last time we were talking about it, okay, this is in Ethan's perspective. Ethan's gonna play it up in his head. Right now we're seeing Bryce have it, and it's just like, I really don't want SJM to be forgetting what she's writing because it's so painfully obvious that like Ethan's not doing a good job here. Like, he's just playing it into it. But I think that this inconsistency is like, I need it to not be an inconsistency. I need her to be doing this for other meanings other reasons, because right now it's just like a glaring one for me.
So I don't see this as an inconsistency, and this is why. Ithan has been badgered about this, right? And even Mark at one point early on was chalking it up to noble intentions, and Ithan was like, no, I'm just mad. 24 hours have passed.
Yeah.
And how much has that conversation rewritten the narrative in Ethan's own brain?
He's like, you know what? It was noble of me.
Yeah. I feel like he's romanticizing his actions.
And he's letting Bryce romanticize it.
And he's allowing Bryce to romanticize it because that will allow him to have a connection to her again.
Yeah. I can see it. I really, really need some kind of like fall from grace moment with this.
Bryce agrees to help Ruhn and his friends commandeer the sprites properly from the astronomer and pay for the freedom. And this actually, I'm going to deviate from my notes because this made me think about our conversation about Bryce needing Hunt with the Viper Queen. Here's a moment where Bryce gets help to buy the sprites freedom. She doesn't bargain with anybody. She doesn't threaten anybody.
It's just
Flynn's like, I got the money, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Right? And they're just like, okay, let's team up and do it. Like, this should have been a teaching moment for Bryce. Yeah. And it's not.
Like, it's amazing what happens when you guys like work together.
Right. Exactly. She does take this moment to momentarily reflect on her actions toward Juniper. Quote, "She'd fucked up one friendship thanks to pulling princess rank, but this, for Lahaba, she'd do it." Now, this is where I was like, she's using Lahaba as a reason to do something that's a little reckless, even though she's getting help from everybody else. I understand. You know, on one hand, is SJM trying to signal that Bryce is gun shy when it comes to using her princess rank? Are we seeing a glimmer of understanding on Bryce's part that what she did was not okay with regard to Juniper?
Yep.
Also, I think more, this is a point that annoys me. Bryce is assuming what Lahaba would want.
Mm-hmm.
And Lahaba can't get mad because she's dead.
Wait, what's the part that she's assuming Lahaba would want? The, like, helping them?
Yeah, helping the sprites gain their freedom. I also assume Lahaba would want that.
Okay.
But I also think it's very convenient that Bryce is like, I'm going to do this for Lahaba. And she can't say what she wants because she's dead.
Okay. Yeah.
I just think in the grand scheme of things, when we think about Hunt...
No, I mean, yeah, hold on. Keep going. I want more on that because I think about I'll do things for my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Like for them, in honor of them, or my dad.
Yeah.
They can't tell me what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just don't have this of you. That you're like, and there you don't even get a say. It's like, okay.
Oh, yeah, but I think you do. I mean, so you do things in your grandparents' or your father's honor that I would assume are good. Bryce's thing here is good, also questionable.
What's the questionable part?
Making up lies to buy their freedom, which is fine.
Wait, what's the lies that she makes up to buy their freedom?
They have to...
Oh, protect and that kind of stuff.
Commandeering them for a royal purpose. She's using her rank, again, with Ruhn. Ruhn is doing the same thing, to commandeer slaves from someone.
You know what? I'm harsh on Bryce somewhere else. You get to be harsh on Bryce here.
Thank you.
Fine. It's allowed. I'm not going to push it anymore. We get to be harsh on Bryce wherever the hell we want.
One cute moment. I love that Ruhn and Bryce are like,
yeah.
You ready, chosen one? Sure am, Starborn.
Dun, 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 dun. Let's go, Starborn.
Shania Twain.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Sorry, the way you said it just kind of gave me like, let's go, chosen one.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Ariadne asks Bryce, like, hey, why are you willing to help me? Like, I don't know you. Quote, Bryce tapped her wrist. My mate was a slave. I can't turn a blind eye to it anymore. No one should. This is bringing Hunt back up with the top of mind. You know, we're kind of warming her up for empathy, breaking down some walls, and especially the fact that Ariadne knows Hunt by name.
And it's not just by name, it's Orion. Athalar, which I'm fascinated by, and I feel like there's a lot of
breadcrumbs.
There's breadcrumbs for something we haven't gotten to, which I know you bring up another one later related to Ariadne, but why? I want to know.
Well, I mean, we're going to so Flynn introduces her as Ari.
Yeah.
Similar to Ariana. Yeah. Ariana, was that you?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to just tell the story. There was like one time years ago, I just like the way that you say it is like I was just we were both in your living room, just sitting down, and you were looking somewhere else, and in the background you just hear, yeah. And like I just remember you turning around so slowly to look at me like, what the fuck are you doing? So whenever I go, yeah, I just think about your face.
I'm glad you remember my face.
Oh, yeah. Or rather, yeah.
A little bit of more Flame and Shadows set up and breadcrumbs before we descend into chapter 51. But we learn about Erithis, Princess of Cinders, who, quote, last we heard, she had been sold to one of the Asteri, which is, definitely set up for Flame and Shadow. However, I wanted to look up Erithris and what the significance of that was, that name. And I think it might potentially be a variation of Irita, or Iris, as we know the name today. The Greek origin of that name means rainbow, and Iris was the Greek goddess of the rainbow and a messenger of the gods. The name is associated with concepts of hope, promise, and transformation.
I love that.
Which I think fits her and her role in Flame and Shadow. The chapter ends with Bryce calling Jessica to ask for information about the dragon, Ariadne. Quote, dark promise glittered in Jessica's words. And now you do too.
Yeah.
As in, owe her a favor. In this moment, in my book, I wrote, it's very Feyre of her. If you think about it from a multiverse perspective, Feyre's always making bargains to gain power.
Yeah.
Bryce is bargaining herself off all the time to get things that she wants. I did question, like, is this in retaliation to Hunt and this idea that I want to be independent from you, but let me go make a bargain with someone else.
Sorry, just read your last note.
My last note. No, Aelin would never. She never asks for help.
No. I think, and this is even before I read Flame and Shadow, I was like, Jaspa doesn't count. I'd have her do all the favors. It's fine. She likes me.
That's fair. That's
fair.
Yeah,
like if I was Bryce, I'd be the one that's been like, I can owe her 100 favors. And
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I will say, I think one of the reasons why I like the fact that Bryce bargains and is willing to sell her soul and anything else to get by or do the things she wants to do is because if you look at characters like Aelin and Feyre, who are gifted with powers or abilities that are beyond a normal person, that they seem all powerful, Bryce will become like that. But in these first 2 books, all she has is essentially her body to sell in order to help her way along. So I do feel like in this way, SJM is compensating for how overpowered Aelin and Feyre were in their books by saying Bryce is as human can get. And we're not yet going to have an overpowered female character. We're going to see someone who struggles and scrapes to do whatever needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, she's the one who's like holding this whole shit together.
Yeah.
Right? Like she's got all the spinning plates. She's the one that people go to asking for help.
Yeah.
Like she's the one who's keeping this running.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Stick around for part 2, which airs on Thursday.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk. Bye!
I'm just copy and paste it at the end.
Because I like the idea of like, has SJM lost her identity? And especially since I feel like SJM lost Ethan's identity.
I have an argument against that.
Wow. So this is where our friendship comes to head. Wow. It's been a great 14 years. Are we having an earthquake?
No.
Okay. We shook.
I didn't feel it.
Okay. Well, we didn't get a notice, so that's good. I would have gotten a notification.
You would have. You're on Do Not Disturb.
No, I would still get an earthquake notification. No. Okay. Continue.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.